Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I would like to welcome you to this class number 6. We have one more to go, inshallah, next week. And as usual, we are thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the organizer. I also would like to appreciate the participation of our participants in this class. Since there are lots of things that we have to deal with, I think I will go straight to the slide so that we can straight away start our class. Let me see. Yes, so this is Islamic perspective of sociology, some reflections. Today is 15th July, class number 6, and the time in Malaysia is 9 in the evening. I will be guided by the following standard format of our presentation or lecture or class. For the opening, I simply would like to welcome you and thank everyone as I did before. There are some reflections also from the Quran that I would like to share this time, and the choice of Quranic verses tailored towards the topic that we are now dealing with. That is on Islamic epistemology as well as Islamic worldview. So there are some reflections. There are some insights from the very source of Islamic reference, that is the Quran, which can inspire us in trying to understand the what they call the various insights that we can gain from this source. So the verses that I have selected are connected to man, either as an individual or groups. And since we are dealing with sociology, and sociology by definition is the study of society, and society consists of humans or men in groups. Therefore, it is only logical that we are inspired by some of the verses that are related to human beings. I will not read this one by one, but I will highlight some of the keywords that will inspire us or help us to understand Islamic epistemology later. We may be coming back to these verses and other relevant verses to elaborate further our understanding of Islamic epistemology. I would like you to pay attention to the word ayat, and also khalaqakum here, which refers to men, to human beings. Now, this verse, as we all know, explains the origins of man, the creation of man, as far as Islamic perspective is concerned, with the creation of the first man, that is Adam, from turab, from dust, and then from that point onwards, then the humanity spread. And when we discuss in sociology, particularly in sociology and also in anthropology, the theory of the existence of man, and this verse is very crucial among others. So there are many other verses which point towards the same idea of the fact that man is created, not evolved, as understood in some tradition. So the word ayat, here it is translated by Assoc as wonders, and many other translations as well. We find the word is translated as signs, the signs. We can see things from the signs. Now, the second one is also from Surah Rome or Romans, the chapter number 30, verse 21. Again, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. So the word ayat is repeated here in the same surah. Again, ayat. And anfusikum, min anfusikum here, that is among your, of your kind, of your kind. And among his wonders or signs is this: He, that is Allah, creates for you mates out of your own kind, so that you might incline towards them, and He engenders love and tenderness between you. In this, behold, there are messages indeed for people who think. So another crucial word here is that yatafakkarun. So we will be dealing with some of the terms used in the Quran that point to the use of the thinking potentials that are endowed and have been made natural in the creation of human beings. And from the perspective of Islam, particularly when we talk about Islamic epistemology, so utilization of this kind of intellectual potential is part and parcel of how we understand science or what is created by God. The next one is the following verse. There is وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and then وَاخْتِلَافِ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ. There is, again here is, it refers to human beings. Diversity of your tongues and colors. So if we observe the social reality, we find people of different languages, different cultures, different colors. So all these are signs of the power of God, of course the existence of God, but the power of God. And this can only be understood by those who have this kind of this, al-alimin, the one who has innate knowledge. So those who are exposed to the same signs, but they are not taking any lessons or any reflections, so may not be categorized under this kind of people. And then the following verse, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ again, مَنَامُكُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ وَابْتِغَاؤُكُمْ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَسْمَعُونَ. So the mention of several potentials endowed by God to be used for understanding sign is one of the approaches taught by the Quran in understanding realities, in understanding existence. So these are some of the few verses that I try to bring here for the purpose of giving us some reflections, so that later on when we talk about Islamic epistemology, we will be assisted by some of the key terminologies or key Quranic terms in the Quran. And also here we can find the word ayat liqawmin yu'minun. So lastly here is indeed these messages are for those who believe, because those who don't believe, they don't really they are not really affected by the existence of all this creation before them. Right. So that is, I mean, these are some of the Quranic reflections that I would like to share with you, which have direct connection to our understanding of Islamic epistemology that we are going to touch today. For the revision purpose, I think I would like to just remind ourselves that we are approaching, we have moved from one stage to another, and now we are here talking about how, and inshallah we are going to conclude our discussion next class, in the next class, where I will do some summary and I will go through some of the feedbacks and also questions, either from chat messages or from the previous questionnaire that I distributed. So if there are some of these issues that you have raised that need to be perhaps categorized, and few categories of issues that you would like me to address would hopefully be able to be addressed in the final lecture. And then I will do some concluding statements. So in the last class, we talk about how, of course, and then, but in trying to address the third big question, that is how Islamic perspective of sociology can be conceived, can be understood, can be constructed. We were talking about the framework of knowledge, or the framework for knowledge construction and so on. But since knowledge itself is an abstract entity, as abstract reality, it is not quite easy for us to explain things. But fortunately, we have a tradition of making some comparison and also analogies. So what I did in the last class was trying to explain the reality of this knowledge or science by equating some elements or components with the physical objects. So this is what we did in the last class. And I have gone through also some questions here from Masainet Kaba and also Brother Nuruddin, asking about difference between science and knowledge. And I will address this. I will address this when I elaborate this Islamic epistemology today. The connectivity between Islamic worldview developed by Faruqi and sociological tradition about social change. Can we say Islamic sociology recommend the transformation of society into some kind of an ideal society differing from secular ideal, for example, socialist ideal? At this stage, what I would like to mention here, there are a few big questions that sciences or social sciences like sociology have to deal with. There are some big questions that sciences like sociology need to address. One of the big questions is connected directly to the philosophical question. One of the philosophical question or big question or ultimate question is what can be regarded as ideal social life, ideal society. Now, on the basis of the concept of ideal society, then the effort in developing or in constructing, in making that ideal society achieved is what is actually attempted by many countries based on these ideologies. You are right in saying that there are some type of societies which have been defined to be ideal. I think the two major competing traditions in contemporary time would be socialist type of society and capitalist type of society. Of course, within these two, there could be a variation in terms of their approaches and so on, but the ideology, the underlying ideologies behind these two competing blocks are there. So each of these ideology, socialism and communism, they have their own interpretation of what can be regarded as an ideal society. So terms like, for example, in Marxist explanation of ideal society, could be egalitarian society, or the classless society. But in explaining that, they have come up with a theory of having a society as being constructed on the basis of classes. On the one hand, there is the class called ruling class, bourgeoisie, and so on. And on the other hand, we are informed of the existence of the proletariat and so on. So all these terms are meant for explaining the type of ideal society that is desired by communism, socialism, and so on. And same thing with capitalists. So same thing with Islam. Islam has its own concept of what constitutes an ideal society. And there are many works which have been written on this. I happen to have, for example, one book here, The Ideal Muslim Society as Defined in the Quran and the Sunnah, Al-Mujtama' al-Muslim. This is by Dr. Muhammad Ali Al-Hashimi. So there are many works which have been written on what can be regarded as ideal society. So in short, what I'm trying to say here is that like many other ideologies, Islam as a way of life, as a system of life, as a religion, also has its own concept of ideal society, which is reflected in our discussion of Islamic worldview as well as Islamic epistemology. So we go back to what we are supposed to address, that is Islamic epistemology, Islamic perspective of sociology. How? More specifically, we can say how Islamic perspective of sociology can be conceived, explained, understood, and even constructed. So, because sociology itself is a science, and there is a question about what is the difference between science and knowledge. There are many ways how you can explain this, but I choose to simplify the things by looking at both are basically knowledge. But more specifically, science, to me, is a science is an organized body of knowledge, systematic body of knowledge. The knowledge about certain subject matter which have been systematized in order to develop as a science ready to be learned, offered. That is why, because of that particular definition, I think a science, like an academic subject, is also called a discipline, because discipline reflects certain kind of arrangement with certain order and nature. So that is why a science, even though a science is also knowledge, it is more as an organized body of knowledge. So as an organized body of knowledge of society, we call it sociology. An organized body of knowledge of living things, we call it biology, things like that. Because in the area, in each of these areas, society or living things is so broad, so broad. So therefore, we must have some limited, some kind of scope that we can confine the study of which will give us idea about the subject matter and also the thing that we want to study. Even that, it has also degrees of difficulty and so on. That is why in any subject there is a gradation. Even in sociology, we have sociology at undergraduate level, sociology at master's level, sociology at PhD level. The society itself is very wide, and these different stages in knowledge increment reflect this kind of organization. So when we talk about framework of a science, there is an organized body of knowledge. As I said, knowledge is abstract. So we need to do some kind of analogy. So I did mention about an analogy to some important or normal objects like a tree, a building, or human body. So if you look at the tree, as I did mention, so we know that there are two parts of this, the upper parts and the lower parts, and same thing with the building. I think with this one I have shown, so I don't need to elaborate further. I just want to recap on what we did in the last class. But I go to the conclusion that any kind of body or whatever you call it has a structure, and the structure has components. Some components may not be as important as the other components, and there could be one of these components which is most important, but sometimes it is most either neglected or it is not really given attention very much. So for that particular purpose, we need to also be inspired by this kind of analogy. So for today's lesson, we would like to recap what we try to have. On the basis of our understanding of the structure of a tree, a building, or a man, we can have a kind of imaginary structure for a science. As an imaginary structure of a science, we have no choice but to illustrate this by way of drawing some kind of that structure. But any structure, if we take the analogy of tree, it has the lower part and also the upper parts. Now, depending on how you would like to place all these parts, but some of the parts are known to be at the root of that. So very, very important part of that. Now, this we may call it foundation. I will explain to you what is what do we mean by foundation, and in our case we are using the word worldview, for example. And under worldview, of course, we have epistemology as well, because by definition, worldview is a collective understanding of key concepts, which the understanding of which form our vision about reality. So one of the key concepts under worldview is concept of knowledge, which we call epistemology for now. The other concepts include, for example, concept of God, concept of universe, concept of man, and other concepts. Yeah. So if we want to put together the various components of knowledge in one structure, so we can tentatively try to let them be in the structure. We can differ in terms of where they are, but certainly the foundation will have to be at the bottom. We can also differ as to how you what are the most accurate terms to be used for foundations, but the fact is that foundation is foundation. So that is why when I look at what you have given, when I ask what is to you, what can be considered as the foundation, so some mentioned about philosophy. So all these terms are actually to a certain extent correct, because you are using terminologies which reflect that kind of the nature, except that it could be what we mentioned like philosophical. It is philosophy. So it is, it can be perhaps considered as the characteristic of foundation rather than the foundation itself. For example, so, but what I can gather from the terms that you have posted in the chat room, I know you have some ideas about this, even though we may not be having the same term to use. But in my presentation, I will be using my own words. If you find other terms to be more accurate with some justification, of course, you can do so on your own. So in any science, we have, yes, the foundation, we have the theory, we have the methodology, and also we have the standard topics, the standard themes, which form the total body, So what we normally study, for example, in sociology, there are standard topics in sociology like culture, social change, social stratification, social mobility, social problems, and others. All these are understood based on certain theoretical orientation. In conventional sociology, I did mention earlier the three major theoretical paradigms in conventional sociology, which help us to understand each of the issues under these themes. I mentioned about structural functionalist approach, social conflict approach, and also symbolic interactionist approach. So there are some sub approaches within these three major theoretical paradigms or traditions. Now, but at this stage, I want you to simply imagine that we put all these elements, the standard topics that are studied in sociology, the theory or the theoretical aspect of the knowledge, the methodological aspect of knowledge, and the foundation of knowledge together. So that at least for now, we will be able to see the what you call this, the various components in the structure. How are they related? Perhaps this is going to be explained later on. Let us continue from here. So by foundations, we mean, or I mean rather, it's worldview, it's epistemology, it's methodology. In fact, we can add one more if we want to reflect this in a more comprehensive manner. For example, you can add here, sorry, oops. Can you see the window now?
Oh, you need to share it again, Prof.
Sorry?
You need to share it again.
Oh, let me see. Do I have this?
Yeah, just out from our view. Okay, coming.
Okay. All right. So you can see what I'm doing now. So let me see. Just actually, okay. Just to add to this one. Now you can see, huh?
Yes.
Okay, good. Right. So I had read literature and books and references. So there are many ways how you explain what I am explaining to you now. That is why even the choice of the word foundation here, I put both plural and singular, because in some works, maybe the word foundation in a singular form is used, but in other sources, they may use the word foundations. So my understanding is could be, if we consider the root of the tree to be the foundation for the tree, the easiest way to understand is this way, that for the root, there is a main root, and there are also subsidiary or secondary roots, but they are still within that foundation. That could be that. So because of that, I am using this foundation. So there could be many other ways, but my way is this. At the level of foundation, what is foundation? Foundation is a base upon which we build something else. So maybe we can use the word premise, we can use the word, of course, foundation, we can use the word base, the base upon which something else is built. Like building, we have the base, and then upon that, we build the building. Now, if that is the case, so knowledge that is, let's say, is to be Islamically oriented, for example, the ideology must be Islamic, and therefore that ideology refers to Islam itself, the religion of Islam. Yeah? Now, that is the starting point. Now, on the basis of that, from the ideology, we have understanding about the key concept that I mentioned: concept of God, concept of universe, concept of man, and concept of knowledge. These concepts are important to form our worldview. Naturally, this concept comes from ideology. There is Islamic ideology, or Islamic worldview come from Islamic ideology. Now, part of Islamic worldview is discussion about knowledge. So we can tentatively say that our understanding about knowledge forms what we call Islamic epistemology. And all this will influence the nature of methodology used in the study of society. So therefore, if we ask this question, how to create a sociology with Islamic orientation, this is just another phrase to describe the output of Islamic perspective. Because Islamic perspective is more or less like another phrase, but the result of that is a sociology with Islamic orientation. Sociology with Islamic orientation is based on Islamic ideology, with Islamic worldview, Islamic epistemology, and so on. So therefore, the general answer to the question that we have asked, how to create a sociology with Islamic orientation, therefore, is by addressing its foundation. So I think if we are to close our lecture today, we can close here, because you already get the answer. However, the answer in one sentence may not be addressing all our concerns. So therefore, I will continue elaborating this further. Now let us try to elaborate further, but this is actually the answer: how to create a sociology with Islamic orientation that is by addressing the foundation of that particular sociology. Now, so if this is what I have mentioned earlier on, so we have, in terms of ideology, in order to make it Islamic, or is that perspective to be Islamic, it must be based on ideology, and that ideology is the religion of Islam, Islamic religion, with Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. So if we understand all these things, the natural result or consequence of this understanding will lead us to have certain kind of methodology that is integrative or integrated in nature. So what do we mean by integrated methodology? So this is another topic that needs to be addressed in the later part if we have opportunity. Now, so this is how it develops, as far as my way of explaining things, or my way of explaining the foundation of knowledge which become the framework for sociological knowledge from Islamic perspective. Now, this is only one part of the discussion about foundation. But we need to also know, having equipped with all this, meaning that if someone is equipped with knowledge of religion, of course, as a way of life, a comprehensive system of life with all knowledge about Islam, and equipped with our knowledge of Islamic worldview, Islamic epistemology, and also Islamic or integrated methodology. So equipped with all this, then how can we use this? What is, in other words, what are the functions of this? So before we go to that, let us look at the framework for Islamic science. So I have already mentioned about the term that we use for defining the different parts of that body of knowledge. We have foundation, we have theory, we have methodology, we have also the typical subjects studied in any particular discipline like sociology, for example. So the various interrelated elements from all these entities together form a coherent intellectual platform which may be referred to as a framework. So my definition of framework here, you may have your own definition, but my definition of framework for the purpose of this class is the various interrelated elements from these entities that I have mentioned all together form a coherent intellectual platform, a coherent intellectual platform, which can be called a framework. And this framework has some functions in the development of science, or of a science, any science. And here perhaps you can address the question that was asked: is there any connection, or is there any similarity between social science and natural science and so on? So if we are talking about the platform, if we are talking about the foundations of science, so regardless of whether you are social science, you are referring to social science or natural science, so the foundation must be the same, except that the way we treat the science might be different. But as far as the foundation is of Islamic science is the same. So then, what are the functions of this? How can we use this framework? In other words, how this framework functions? What are the functions of this framework? So for me, so again, I had to stress that this is for me, because I will allow that differing opinions, differences of opinions. As a process of learning, I normally will just say things according to what I understand, and the approach that I opt, and from there I will allow a variety of opinions to assist me in enhancing further my understanding. So for me, this kind of framework can be used for a number of roles, for a number of functions. This same framework, there is the framework, the platform with Islamic worldview, Islamic epistemology, and so on, can be used for constructing Islamic social science or social science with Islamic orientation, Islamic base. So whatever we want to use, the term that we want to use is okay. But the idea here is that you can use this platform, you can use this framework first for constructing an organized body of knowledge, which is called science with Islamic foundation, with Islamic premise. That is number one, function number one. Function number two, we can also use this one in order to be, I put here a filter. You can use maybe other analogy. What I can see, a filter is used for sifting, what we want and from what we do not want. So we can isolate, we can separate things which are needed and things which are not needed. So therefore, a platform, a framework like this, an Islamic framework for knowledge, can be used to assess other social sciences. So our critique of modern social sciences is based on this platform. So when we say that there are limitations of modern sociology, we are not saying it out of nothing. We have certain ground for advancing these critical views on certain parts of modern sociology due to the fact that we subscribe to different framework of knowledge. So therefore, with the different framework of knowledge, we can see that certain sciences that are available today might not be compatible with the dictates of this framework. Of course, we can therefore have this kind of critique on the basis of this platform or framework. Function number three, to me, you can add, of course, later on if you like. It also becomes a basis and guide for commenting on any issue arising in society. I think our brother in one of the classes raised the question, how can we use our understanding of the concept of Islamic perspective of society in dealing with the issues on the ground. In my later response to this, I did mention that there are different ways how things are connected to certain things. For example, there are certain sciences which can directly solve the problem on the ground. Yeah? If you have knowledge of, if you are electrical engineers, you can solve the immediate problems that are related to electrical matters directly. So there is no such kind of thing. But there are times when certain knowledge may not be directly related to the immediate solution to the immediate problems, but it contributes in certain other ways. and the way that we look at how things may be better addressed, for example, particularly in the long term. So with this, I think we stop at this, but of course, we further elaboration of this, for example, here, Islamic epistemology, or I put in a simple term only here. I know that Islamic epistemology is more sophisticated than this, but just for the purpose of understanding concept of knowledge as one of the components in Islamic worldview. And Islamic epistemology, I did mention that we address several parts of knowledge and how this, the understanding of this, how does the collective understanding of all these aspects influence our thinking about social reality? What are those aspects? These aspects. How does knowledge of, or how does our understanding of the nature of knowledge, purpose of knowledge, for example, influence our way of understanding social reality? Same thing with the source of knowledge. So example, we recognize the fact that in talking about sources of knowledge from Islamic epistemology, it recognizes both broad categories of sources. One is divine source, the other one is human sources. Unlike in some tradition, based on some ideology or certain ideology, maybe divine revelation does not come into the picture. And that makes the way we look at social reality different. So that is how you can see the foundation influence the way we look at things. So maybe class input, you can have this with you, aspects and components in Islamic epistemology. Even if we take one aspect of knowledge, like source of knowledge, when we understand sources of knowledge in Islam, already it can give us directly the difference between Islamic way of looking at things and the other ways of looking at things. Yeah. So I think I would like to stop at this stage to allow the rest to raise any questions. Perhaps in response to your question, I may be touching also the part of our discussion that are not touched up to this point. Thank you very much. I hand over this to our brother.
Thank you so much, Prof. Feels like you just started. The discussion is so heavy. You may be touching only on the top and then you're not going deep yet. Okay, brothers, sisters, welcome to us live, to us on the chat. I have not seen any question. I think we need another session for this, another 7 weeks.
Actually, what I did in the of course for undergraduate we had 28 hours. 28 hours. We have only 7 hours, 1/4 of the total.
1/4. And we are not sociologists.
we don't really talk yet. For example, what Al-Quran says about society as one.
Oh, yeah. So many ayat.
Yeah, and then later on we move to the next one, that is what our scholars have written on society. So that is another source of knowledge about society. So actually there are many, but I cannot. I certainly cannot.
Okay, we have from our beloved brother Nuruddin. Can you give an example of how this framework can be used to critique contemporary sociology designs?
I think the answer is very simple. You can go back to what Professor Jamal Faruqi has mentioned earlier on. The three reasons why we consider modern sociology to be defective in what particular sense. So on the basis of that, you can look at the three reasons given earlier, plus the 5 points, that we have deliberated, given in the book of, or the work of Jamal Faruqi, and then followed by the three reasons under Islam. One is, for example, on the basis of Islamic ideology, as we say that Islamic ideology has different epistemology. Therefore, this different epistemology provides different ground for us to see things in different lights. So perhaps if I can give one direct example, is like this. I think I can repeat again. Modern sociology is, I mean, by its very nature, it is defined as the scientific study of social reality, basically. But the definition of scientific might be problematic. Yeah? That is why I replace that with, instead of scientific, we replace that with systematic. Because scientific study might be understood to confine only to what can be measured. So there are what we call hard social facts. Hard social facts are the facts about society which can be counted, which can be measured, which can be observed, and so on. And therefore, it is possible for us to gather these facts and then tell about society as it is. That's why one part of society is about what is society, what is really taking place. So we collect the fact through questionnaire, through survey, through, because all this, this is possible to be done. But limiting our understanding of society by looking or by taking into account only those hard social facts, and that is the real reality of society, that is what we don't agree. Because society is beyond what is only measurable. And I think Jamal Faruqi has mentioned a lot, and I will share with you later on also what has been said by A.R. Mu'min. A.R. Mu'min, a scholar, a sociologist from India, has also addressed that restructuring of sociology will have to address the aspect of Islamic epistemology, because our understanding of what is knowledge also different. So the moment there is a difference at the level of understanding of knowledge, it certainly will be different in the way we look at knowledge of any other subject, including society. Yeah? So I think that is my response to your question.
From our sister Bibi Jan, I seek your view to help me to understand the deviant behavior of our Muslim parents who excessively abuse their children. How do we look at the intergenerational issue from Islamic sociological perspective?
I think, brother, this one we need another
another class.
Another class, another lecture, because this relates to our, actually this one is also specific discussion under what we call deviant behavior as well as social problems. Yeah? Even to talk about defining what is problematic in society also is taking time. For example, what make a condition, even defining a condition to be problematic is problematic because we don't use the same value judgment. So that is why, of course, from the Islamic point of view at the general level, some of these are universal, meaning what is not good is not good, right? I think the explanation given by many people on this is, including, for example, very simple one is lack of religious knowledge. lack of proper religious knowledge. Now, even the proper religious knowledge to different people might be different. That create a problem. That is why, if you would like to know from the sociological perspective, we need the data. We need the data as to what are the factors which might have contributed to the to this kind of deviant act. We know very well that the same kind of problem happens in different places, might not be due to the same cause. Yeah. So the context, as I did mention earlier on, the context is very important, and also the psychology of the person who is involved in that. So multi-dimensional aspects of the problem needs to be seen. In addition to, of course, defining what is considered to be deviant. Sometimes the contradiction is like this. What is regarded by an individual person, let's say with certain value system, to be problematic, might not be seen as problematic by society or even the law that is governing the society. So when that is the case, you may be facing certain kind of situation whereby, like in the case of Malaysian, what I call this, in one of the Western countries, trying to educate her children in certain way by using certain way, which is considered by the country to be against the law, and as a result, the mother was imprisoned. But to the mother, it was the way that she interprets to be the good way of educating the person. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to look at always look at three aspects of a problem. Number one is what is considered to be not to say ideal teaching, the teaching of Islam on that particular issue, or the value that Islam attached to that particular problem. Is it we have the 5 levels of that. Huh? Maybe is it prohibited, haram? Is it permissible? Is it discouraged? Because sometimes we interpret something that is discouraged to be prohibited, and therefore we would like that to be also prohibited. So our understanding of what constitutes the bad or the good of certain thing needs to be properly understood. That is number one. So that can be regarded as the expected teaching, religious teaching on that particular issue. The second is, what is the reality on the ground? What is the reality on the ground? Yeah? And the third is the context. The context, I mean here, the various interrelated issues or forces in society. For example, we may want to do certain thing, but the context is that we are living in certain society with certain law. Are you allowed to do that? If you are not allowed, and that constrains your action. In sociology, we have one concept, we call it sociological perspective and sociological imagination. Sociological perspective simply means that we, as a person, lives in society, while we, as an individual, can do anything that we like, but we don't do what we like because we are in society, or we are in certain social setting. Example, like we are having class. Can I suddenly shout? Can I suddenly laugh? Can I suddenly cry? Can I jump now? I have the capacity to jump, but our social interaction now does not allow me to jump. So all these things actually constrain the individual actions. As much as we would like individual action to be freely done, but we are living in a society where not everything is within our control. Not everything is within our control. So that needs to be understood. And then with this understanding, then we know the limit of our action. And I think that is why Islam also provides stages in the process of even correcting certain things. Yeah? Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi fa in lam yastati' fa bilisani fa in lam yastati' fa biqalbi, as I said earlier on. So there are stages in dealing with certain even bad things, something that we don't like. Why? Because Islam takes into account the context and reality. Just like in prayer, if we are not able to pray in the normal way, we can pray in the way that is suitable in the context. So if that can happen in rituals, in ibadah, khassa, it also, this principle should also be applied more so in the social world. Wallahu a'lam.
Thank you so much, Prof. Of course, you will attempt to give a full answer to every question. Alhamdulillah, we really appreciate it. We have a few more questions. We will forward to you. Maybe next week you can highlight.
Okay.
So, okay. Any final word, Prof, before we close?
There is nothing special except that I pray for the betterment of everyone and pray for me also. And hopefully we can sum up and also wrap up our class, and we will discuss how certain things which are not able to be tackled within this short course period can also be dealt with in some other ways, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. See you next week. Thank you, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.